Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Happy July. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us for another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Logan Purcell will be joining me in a few minutes. We're going to continue to talk about the NBA playoffs. We already have one side of the bracket complete. We're going to talk about the other side of the bracket. We're also going to get into some talk of the Cleveland Indians, the WNBA as well. I will also continue to talk about soccer news, including the UEFA 2021 tournament that is going on right now throughout the continent of Europe. I'll also be giving you updates on our Ohio MLS teams, the Columbus Crew, and FC Cincinnati. So we've got a lot to break down for you today on this first episode of July 2021 of the Cleveland Sports Show. I hope you're ready, ladies and gentlemen, so fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. It's another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show right here on NordoniaHills.news. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.news, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Logan Purcell, Nordonia student, will be joining me in a few minutes. We're going to talk about the NBA playoffs, of course. We'll also keep you updated with the WNBA and the Indians as they continue their home stretch at Progressive Field. But first, you know how we get it started each week with our sports fact of the day. And today is July 3rd, 2021. And on this day, back in 1994, we've got a soccer sports fact for you today. And the 1994 FIFA World Cup, which was hosted in the United States, one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history, as Romania eliminated Argentina 3-2 from the round of 16. This game was played at the Rose Bowl Stadium in Pasadena, California. One of the biggest upsets, as I mentioned, of the 1994 World Cup. Now, Romania, after that win against Argentina in the round of 16, a week later would face off against Sweden in the quarterfinals. The Romania and Sweden, after full time and after extra time, were tied at 2 goals apiece. Therefore, the game had to be decided by a penalty shootout, and Sweden got the better of Romania in the shootout, winning it 5-4. But what a run for Romania in that 1994 World Cup. In fact, they actually finished at the top of their group in Group A, which is the group that the U.S. was included in. Romania finished with 6 points thanks to 2 wins and 1 draw in their 3 group stage games. And then, as I mentioned, that huge round of 16 win against Argentina, that 3-2 win, but then they fell to Sweden in the quarterfinals 2-2 after regulation and extra time, and then they lost 5-4 on penalty kicks. The 1994 World Cup final overall would be won by Brazil. It would be their 4th World Cup win, and Brazil faced Italy in the 1994 final in Los Angeles, and the game, once again, went to penalty shootouts. 0-0 was the score after regulation, and then 30 minutes more of extra time could not settle the score between these two, so therefore we needed another penalty shootout. Brazil won 3-2 on penalty kicks, with Roberto Baggio of Italy missing the critical kick, which gave Brazil the victory. 0-0 and then 3-2 on penalty kicks, giving Brazil their 4th World Cup win. Brazil was still with the most number of World Cup wins in FIFA's history, with 5. Their most recent World Cup victory was in 2002. So that is your sports fact of the day, and we're going to keep it soccer related here on the Cleveland Sports Show for a little bit more. we'll talk about the UEFA Euro 2021 tournament, and we've had a lot to discuss. You know what's crazy? We've had a Euro tournament. This tournament has gone back since 1960. That was the inaugural tournament. So we've had about, every 4 years. So about 15 tournaments thus far in UEFA Euro history. My math might be a little off. I'm doing this in my head as we go. And here's what is an astonishing fact. In all of those tournaments, there have only been a combined total of 9 own goals. 9 own goals in all those tournaments from 1960 before this year's tournament. In this tournament alone, in 2021, we have had 10 own goals so far. 10 own goals. That is just an absolutely astonishing fact. And one of the broadcasters for ESPN in the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament said that this tournament really has just had everything. Upsets, red cards, the drama, the own goals. This is just an amazing tournament to watch. And we have been in the knockout round for about a week now. Let's get you updated with what happened in the round of 16 games. Denmark crushed Wales 4-0. Wales were even playing down with 10 men due to a red card that was awarded to Harry Wilson in the 90th minute at the end of the game. So for those last couple of minutes, they were already down a few goals anyway, but Denmark defeated Wales 4-0 in that round of 16 game. Then Italy defeated Austria last Saturday as well by a final score of 2 goals to 1, and all these goals came in extra time. After 90 minutes, the score was 0-0, but then Federico Chisea in the 95th minute, and then Matteo Pessina in the 105th minute got 2 goals for Italy, which gave them a 2-0 lead, and then Sasa Kaljic in the 114th minute scored a goal, but it was all a little too late for Austria as Italy defeat them 2-1. And then we had the Czech Republic taking on the Netherlands. This was a big upset as well. Czech Republic get the better of the Netherlands 2-0. Netherlands also were down one man after Matthias de Ligt was awarded a red card for a handball in the 55th minute. And then Thomas Holz in the 68th minute, and then Patrick Schick in the 80th minute gave the Czech Republic those 2 critical goals to help them move on to the quarterfinals. Now, another matchup, Belgium defeated Portugal by a final score of 1-0 this past Sunday as well. So Cristiano and Ronaldo and Portugal are out of this UEFA Euro tournament. Belgium moved on to the quarterfinals with a 1-0 win. And this may have been the craziest round of 16 game out of all of them. Spain defeated Croatia 5-3. Now Spain took, they were to start off this game, they were down 1-0 due to an own goal, and then they tie up the game before the half. And then this is when the goals, they just started to rain. Cesar Azpilicueta in the 57th minute and then Ferran Torres in the 77th minute. Those 2 goals gave Spain a 3-1 lead over Croatia. But then Mislav Orsic in the 85th minute got a critical goal for Croatia. And then in added time, Mario Palasic gave Croatia the tying goal. So we went, after 90 minutes, we were tied 3-3, which required extra time. Then, in the 100th minute, Alvaro Morata broke the deadlock for Spain, putting them back on top 4-3. And then Mikel Oyarzabal in the 103rd minute, as I mentioned, got another goal for Spain, giving them a 5-3 lead. Croatia did not score at all in extra time, and this was one of the biggest upsets of the tournament. Spain, who has a much lower FIFA ranking than Croatia, upset the favorites 5-3, and the defending World Cup champions are out of the UEFA tournament. That's right, France are out of the tournament in the round of 16. They also blew a 3-1 lead in regulation time. France were playing Switzerland in their round of 16 matchup. Haris Seferovic for Switzerland got an early goal for them, putting them up 1-0. However, Karim Benzema tied up the game in the 57th minute, and only 2 minutes later, he scored again to put France up 2-1. Talk about a momentum swing there. And then in the 75th minute, Paul Pogba scored the goal that looked like it was going to be the icing on the cake. He put France up 3-1, and there were only 15 minutes left, but guess what? It was Switzerland who controlled those last 15 minutes. Haris Seferovic again scored in this time in the 81st minute to cut the deficit to only 1, and then Mario Gavranovic scored in the final minute to tie this game up at 3 goals apiece. We then had to go to extra time. 30 minutes of extra time could not settle the score between these two teams. We were still deadlocked at 3. Consequently, penalty kicks awaited us, and Switzerland get the better of France on penalty kicks 5-4. Kylian Mbappe missing the critical kick that sent Switzerland to the quarterfinals. So that's right, the defending World Cup champions France are out of this year's European Championships. The last two matchups of the round of 16 in the Euro tournament, England defeated Germany 2-0 thanks to 2 second-half goals by England. Raheem Sterling in the 75th minute and then Harry Kane in the 86th minute got the job done, sending England to the quarterfinals and eliminating Germany. Final matchup of the round of 16, we have Sweden going up against Ukraine. Ukraine defeats Sweden in the most dramatic of fashions. And in the 27th minute, the goal-scoring party got started with a Shevchenko goal in the 27th minute, putting Ukraine up 1-0 over Sweden. However, Emil Forsberg in the 43rd minute tied up the game going into halftime, and that's what the score of the game was for the rest of the second half. So we had to go into extra time again, and Sweden actually had to play down a man from the 99th minute forward due to a red card that was awarded to Marcus Danielsson. So Sweden playing down 10 men in extra time. It looked like we were going to go to another penalty shootout, and we were in added time of that additional extra time. And in that added time, in the last second possible you could think of, Artem Dovbyk of the Ukraine scored one of the most critical goals in the nation's football history. He put them up 2-1 with barely any time left to play, and it gave the Ukraine a 2-1 win over Sweden, sending them to the final 8 of this year's UEFA European Championship. So this round of 16, these matchups, they've had drama, they've had everything you have wanted. And now we're going to get into the quarterfinals. Switzerland defeated Spain yesterday. The final score after regulation time and extra time was 1-1. Spain defeated Switzerland 3-1 on penalty kicks, and Italy defeated Belgium yesterday 2-1. So Belgium, who is right now the number 1 ranked team according to the FIFA rankings, is out of this tournament. Italy move on. They've been one of the more impressive teams in this tournament and are going to play against Spain in the semifinals on July 6th from Wembley Stadium in London. So we already have one semifinal matchup ready to go for you this week. The other semifinal matchup will be determined today, as the Czech Republic will be taking on Denmark, Ukraine also going up against England a little bit later today. And that concludes our latest news on the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament, but we're not done with soccer news just yet. We're going to get into the Columbus Crew here for you real quick and talk about the MLS for a little bit. Now, the most recent game for the Columbus Crew was this past Sunday, June 27th, against Austin. It was a road game, and it finished 0-0. So after that unfortunate loss to Philadelphia last Wednesday, the Crew settled for the point here and in this tie with Austin. Now remember, if a team wins in the MLS, they receive 3 points in the standings. If they lose, they receive 0 points. And if there is a tie, each team will receive 1 point. So thanks to this 0-0 tie, the Columbus Crew do earn 1 point. The Crew do have a home game today, this Saturday, July 3rd at 5 p.m., from downtown Columbus. They'll be taking on the New England Revolution, a matchup of last year's Eastern Conference Finals. Then, after that matchup today, Friday, July 9th, as I mentioned last week, Ohio soccer fans, mark your calendars because the Columbus Crew will be in Cincinnati taking on FC Cincinnati. That'll be a great rivalry game for us to watch. And speaking of FC Cincinnati, their overall schedule, this last Saturday, they beat Toronto 2-0, a huge win for Cincinnati, and included a fourth-minute goal, very early goal from Alan Cruz. And then in the 68th minute, Luciano Acosta sealed the deal, giving Cincinnati a huge 2-0 win over Toronto on the road, no less. So that was a big deal for Cincinnati. Cincinnati have a game against Houston today at 8:30 p.m. That'll be another road game for FC Cincinnati. They'll return home this upcoming Friday, July 9th, for that critical matchup with the Columbus Crew. We take a look at the standings here for both the Columbus Crew and FC Cincinnati. First for the Crew. In 10 matches played so far, the Crew have 4 wins, 3 draws, and 3 losses for a combined total of 15 points. That puts them in 5th place in the MLS's Eastern Conference right now. And their matchup with New England is a pretty significant one today because New England are the top seed in the MLS's Eastern Conference right now. They have 7 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses for a combined total of 23 points. Looking on FC Cincinnati's side of the picture, they have 9 matches played thus far, 3 wins, 1 draw, but 5 losses on the season for them. However, they do have 10 points on the season. They do get to that double-digit point tally for them. And that concludes our latest edition of soccer news here on the Cleveland Sports Show. But this episode is far from over, and Logan Purcell is going to be joining me right now. NBA playoffs, here we come. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Logan Purcell on the Cleveland Sports Show with me for another episode. Logan, happy Saturday, happy July. How have you been doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been a very fun-filled NBA weekend, though. I'm really excited to get into it.
It certainly has, and that's where we're going to start right now, Logan. Talk about the NBA, the conference finals. We've had one side of the bracket that has been completed. The other side, we still have a couple more games, maybe even one more game to decide. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about that bracket side that's completed, however. Clippers-Suns. This series is over, and the Suns have won it in 6 games to defeat the Los Angeles Clippers. Chris Paul is heading to his first ever NBA Finals. Now, the last time we talked, Logan, we had completed 3 games in this series, and the Suns were up 2-1. That in Game 4, they took a commanding 3-1 lead, and when you saw the final score, if you saw the final score in Game 4 between the Suns and the Clippers, you would have thought this game was played in like 1982. The final score, 84-80. That's right, 84-80. The score, Logan, in the fourth quarter was 15-14 in favor of the Suns. And, you know, a big performance for Devin Booker, 25 points in 38 minutes. Chris Paul, 18 points in 37 minutes to go along with 7 assists as well, leading the Suns. Paul George, I'm going to be honest, Logan, not the best performance he's had. I know he had the 23 points, the 16 rebounds in 42 minutes, but it just seemed to me like he was not able to find his shot at all in that fourth quarter, and that was detrimental to the Clippers as they fell behind 3-1. Now, going into Game 5, it was back in Phoenix, Logan, and Suns fans were ready to celebrate, but the Clippers said, hang on, not so fast. In Game 5, on the road in Phoenix, they went up 20-5 very early on in the first quarter. At the end of the first quarter, they were up 36-26, and Marcus Morris Sr. was really carrying them in that first quarter. The Suns did pull it back a little bit, and in the third quarter, they actually took a lead, 62-61, but then Paul George and the Clippers turned it on. He was phenomenal. George with 41 points in 41 minutes to also go along with 13 rebounds and 6 assists. Marcus Morris, the third leading scorer on the Clippers team in Game 5, 22 points in 39 minutes, and then Reggie Jackson had the playoff career of his life. 23 points in Game 5 in 38 minutes. He looked terrific. And the Clippers with a much-needed victory. We also can't forget to talk about DeMarcus Cousins, who really, despite them having lost this conference finals, he stepped up in quite a few of these games, Logan. In Game 5, he had 15 points in 11 minutes. Now, Game 6 was back at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, and to be quite honest with you, Logan, I expected the Clippers to come out and win this game. I thought that they had the momentum, having just won in Phoenix, and they had the home crowd behind them, but the Suns put a stop to all of that. It was a tight game for the majority of the first half, but the Suns pulled away in the third and fourth quarter. They outscored LA 31-26 in the third, and then by 13 in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter score in Game 6 was 33-20. And for the Suns, Chris Paul, a phenomenal closeout performance. 41 points in 35 minutes to go along with 8 assists as well. Jay Crowder, 19 points in 33 minutes. Devin Booker, 22 points in 42 minutes. And DeAndre Ayton, it seems like he's grown up before our eyes, Logan. He's been dominant in these playoffs, and he had 16 points and 17 rebounds. 17 rebounds in Game 6. On the Clippers side of things, Paul George struggled, 21 points in 41 minutes. Marcus Morris Sr. was the leading scorer for the Clippers. He had 26 points in 42 minutes. Reggie Jackson, from what we've seen in these playoffs, he had a subpar performance in Game 6, 13 points in 37 minutes. And the Suns destroy the Clippers in Game 6, win 130-103 the final score, and they are moving on to the NBA Finals. So, Logan, let's talk about these Western Conference Finals for a sec here. What were your overall thoughts in those last couple of games? Because I felt like Paul George in Game 5, he was phenomenal, but then in Games 4 and 6, which were in LA at the Staples Center, he was not his usual self. He was missing shots that he normally makes. Devin Booker and Chris Paul, they shot a lot better than they did in Game 3, which we talked about last week. But what are your thoughts on how this Suns team performed against the Clippers? And do you think that the Suns would have still won this series if Kawhi Leonard was healthy? Because don't forget, Kawhi Leonard was not able to play at all in this series, having injured his knee in Game 4 in the last round against the Utah Jazz. So what are your thoughts, Logan? Could the Suns still have beaten a healthy Clipper squad that would have had Kawhi Leonard?
Well, to answer that final question, I think they would have. I think it definitely would have been obviously a lot more of a battle, but I still think that Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton would have been able to pull it out.
Okay.
Also, as a relative mention of their depth, they have a lot more depth, I think, than this Clippers team, and they're both very deep teams. But I think that just the depth overall, Cameron Payne, Dario Saric, Torrey Craig especially had some really good minutes off the bench for the Suns defensively in Game 6. I think that this team, it was too deep, and they still have those really good top-heavy scorers. So I think even with Kawhi Leonard playing, I think this team still goes probably 7 games and take them all the way. But, one of the biggest things that I kind of had a realization around Game 5 or Game 6 even about this Suns team.
Okay.
You could talk about Devin Booker. Obviously, based on his Game 6 performance, 7 of 8 from three-point land, 34 minutes, 41 points, and 3 steals for Chris Paul. He's crucial.
Right.
But I think the X-factor player for this team going into these NBA Finals is going to be DeAndre Ayton.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
He is the guy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Devin Booker's probably their best player on the team. I think Chris Paul's the veteran that gets everybody going. He's the guy in your ear that, telling you to kick rocks and get going,
Right.
But DeAndre Ayton, if he does not play well, this team does not have a chance. But if he plays like a superstar, like he has in almost throughout the entire series, this team is going to be NBA champions this year. Because this guy just has the ability to absolutely take over the game. And what I noticed very often when looking at his numbers, even when he has 20 to 30 points, he doesn't miss more than 4 or 5 shots.
Right.
Even when he has 16 on 40 minutes, 16 and 17 in Game 6 is amazing, right?
Right.
He took 10 shots. He took 10 shots.
Yeah, it's efficient.
That to me is just amazing at how efficient and how aggressive and how young he is as well.
Yeah.
He's an amazing runner. He's a fantastic defender, not to mention his 4 blocks, I believe, in game 4 or 5. He had 4 blocks in game 4.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is just a defensive X-factor. So going into these NBA Finals, regardless of who they play, whether it be Trae Young and those Hawks or, a crippled Giannis in the Bucks, it'll be a very interesting finals because DeAndre Ayton is the guy for this Suns offense.
And DeAndre Ayton in the 2018 draft was the number 1 pick. So, this guy has had a lot of the spotlight been shining on. It's been shining on him for a while now, and this with the lights the brightest, he's performed probably the best we've ever seen him perform. Because I'll be honest with you, before this Suns playoff run, I really didn't know a lot about DeAndre Ayton, but seeing what he's been able to do, especially in this series, talk about that game-winning dunk in Game 2 against the Clippers, this guy has really made a name for himself in this league, and like you said, Logan, he's so young, and he's been terrific. The Suns, Monty Williams can't talk enough about the great job he has done with that squad. James Jones winning Executive of the Year, former Cavalier champion, and this is just a great team, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them play whoever comes out of the East in the NBA Finals. But let's wrap up the Clippers side of things, Logan. And let's talk about Paul George, because, the narrative was going into this postseason that, he's not a good playoff performer, he's a regular season guy, kind of like how people used to talk about Giannis, and some people still talk about Giannis that way. But do you think that Paul George proved to us that we need to put all that slander behind us? Because even DeMarcus Cousins was saying, why are you guys talking about him in this manner? This guy's one of the best ever to lace it up. So do you think the way Paul George performed in these playoffs, because, he wasn't, averaging 10 points in a series like he was in the bubble last year, do we need to put all that playoff P talk behind us, basically?
Well, I don't know. The beginning of this postseason, when we talked about round 1 and some of round 2, all of round 2 against Utah, or round 1, I'm sorry. But the thing is it's just a very interesting situation because of the fact that Paul George didn't shoot efficiently.
Right.
Even Game 6, when it mattered most in one of the elimination games, he had 21 points, don't get me wrong, but he shot 1 of 6 from 3.
Yeah.
Shot 1 of 6, 6 of 15 from the field in 41 minutes, and that's just not how you can perform. You can't perform like that. Game 4, 41 minutes, 23 points. It's a good night, but 5 of 20 from the field.
Right.
12 of 18 from the line. Don't get me wrong. His scoring and things like that were very, very elite. They were good numbers, but the problem is his efficiency. As you know, I've been here long enough. I'm an efficiency guy. If you can't finish efficiency, anybody can go out and shoot 40 times and hit 15 of them. Anybody. So if the guys who are elite, who can go out and put up 40 points on 10 shots, those are the elite of the elite in the NBA.
Yeah. And
I don't know yet if it's time to put it behind us, but I think we're getting close.
Yeah, I certainly think we're getting close, and I think I'd have to probably disagree with you on the Kawhi take, because I think if this team had Kawhi, they are a very deep team still, and then you add how well Reggie Jackson's been playing. Marcus Morris Sr. got better as this series progressed. So, the talents of Kawhi Leonard, both on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. Because let's be honest, in Game 4, I guarantee you the final score is not 84-80 if Kawhi Leonard is playing. Maybe the Suns still have 84 points because Kawhi was playing great defense, but I guarantee you the Clippers don't put up 80 points on the board. So I would have to say if Kawhi Leonard was playing, there's no reason for this Clippers team not to have been in the finals, but that is not the case, Logan. The Suns win Game 6, 130-103 to advance to the NBA Finals. They're the 2021 Western Conference champions. Before we get into the Eastern Conference Finals here, Logan, I want to ask you this. No matter who comes out of the East, whether it's Milwaukee or Atlanta, do you think the Suns should be favored against either of those two teams, no matter who comes out in these Eastern Conference Finals?
Well, I think it depends. If Giannis' hyperextended knee ends up being more than what it's being made out to be as of now, I think they should be the favorites. Because without Giannis, this Bucks team, don't get me wrong, they proved a lot in Game 6. Game 5.
I'm sorry. We'll talk about that.
They proved a lot in Game 5. We'll get into that in a minute, though. But without Giannis, this Bucks team is not the Suns team. They really are not. And even with Giannis, I still think you have an argument that the Suns should be favored. And now if the Hawks come out, I think just from an on-paper perspective, I think the Hawks should be the underdogs in the series. So I think almost regardless of who comes out, I do think that the Suns should be the favorite.
Yeah, and as Chris Paul is healthy, Devin Booker is healthy. This Suns team overall is healthy. The only real health problems that they've gone through was when Chris Paul hurt his shoulder in the first round against the Lakers. Then he went out with COVID protocol. Devin Booker broke his nose in this series, but he still was putting up his numbers. And then Cameron Payne twisted his ankle early on it was in game 3 of the series against the Clippers, but he looks better. So for the most part, going into this series, now they're going to have about over a week of rest, and this Suns team is going to be rested and they're going to be healthy going into the finals. So that's going to be another factor that we'll have to look for. Are the Suns going to be rusty going into game 1, or are they going to feel healthy and have a spring in their step going into the NBA Finals? But that concludes the Western Conference side of things. Let's go into that Hawks-Bucks series, Logan, because I know you were mentioning some aspects of it earlier in the show. You were talking about Giannis and him hurting his knee. That was in Game 4. But let's go to Game 3, because that was the last time we talked. We already had the first 2 games of the series completed. It was tied 1-1. Game 3 in Atlanta, Logan. This was a very close game, and guess what? We had some drama in this game as well. The first conference finals game in Atlanta since 2015, when guess who swept the Atlanta Hawks? That's right, the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron James and company. But that's nor here nor there. Game 3 in Atlanta this past Sunday between the Bucks and the Hawks. This was a game where Atlanta was up at 1.95-88. They looked like they were going to take that critical 2-1 series lead, but no, hold on, it was the Chris Middleton show in the fourth quarter. He was terrific in that fourth quarter, Logan. He finished the game with his playoff career high of 38 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists, all in 42 minutes. That tied the most number of minutes a Bucks player played in Game 3, tying Drew Holiday for 42 minutes as well. Drew Holiday, 6 points and 12 assists, so didn't get it done in the scoring column, but did get those. He was dishing out those assists. He led the Bucks in assists in Game 3. Giannis Antetokounmpo did his thing, 33 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, all in 41 minutes, leading to this Bucks Game 3 victory, giving them a 2-1 lead in the series. And in Game 3, Trae Young also stepped on an official's shoe, or his foot to be more specific, and we thought at first it was a twisted ankle, but then we learned it was a bone bruise, and Trae Young, it was actually so bad that he couldn't play in Game 4 at all. And when I heard that news, I was thinking to myself, this series is over. Bucks are winning Game 4, and if Trae Young doesn't come back in for Game 5, this is going to be a gentleman's sweep. But man, was I thankfully proven wrong. This series was tied at 2 games apiece after Game 4, thanks to a 110-88 victory for the Atlanta Hawks. Now, the Hawks outscored Milwaukee 26-16 in the second quarter and 36-24 in the third quarter. But in the second half, the Bucks were pretty shaken after they saw their superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo go down. We saw the replay of that injury, Logan, and it looked horrific. Doctors and the medical staff of the Milwaukee Bucks analyzed it and said that it was a hyperextended knee, and Giannis would leave the game finishing with 14 points and 8 rebounds to go along with 3 assists. And that really, Logan, it really shook up the Bucks. Like, you could see after Giannis went down and that injury, they just didn't have that pep in their step. And the Hawks just had so much momentum. They had the home crowd behind them, and they blew the game wide open in the second half. And as I mentioned, they won it 110-88. This was without Trae Young as well for the Hawks. We look at that stat line for Atlanta. Without Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, 15 points and 7 assists. Lou Williams was terrific. Sweet Lou with 21 points and 8 assists and 5 rebounds as well. Bogdan Bogdanovic, this could have been a guy the Bucks may have been able to snatch in their trade talks last year, were unable to do so for specific reasons that we're not going to get into. But Bogdanovich of the Hawks, 20 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds. Cam Reddish, to me, Logan, has really looked good since coming back in Game 2. He had 12 points and 5 rebounds to go along with 2 assists in 23 minutes. So this was a huge Game 4 win for Atlanta. And then Game 5, the most recent game in this series, taking place in Milwaukee. The Bucks won it 123-112. Once again, Trae Young did not play, but Giannis was also ruled out for this game as well. So it was a battle of the two teams without their franchise players, and Milwaukee is the more complete team. Like, let's not get it twisted here, and they showed it. Winning Game 5, 123-112. Brook Lopez was terrific for the Milwaukee Bucks, 33 points. He was the leading scorer for Milwaukee. Bobby Portis, which his nickname is Crazy Eyes, and he had a crazy performance in Game 5, Logan. 22 points and 8 rebounds. Chris Middleton looked good as well, 26 points and 8 assists. And then Drew Holiday, a great scoring night with 25 points and also leading the Bucks in assists, again with 13 assists in Game 5. Going on the Hawks side of things, Bogdanovich, the leading scorer for Atlanta, with 28 points. But I'll be honest with you, Logan, they were the quietest 28 points I've ever seen. John Collins, 19 points. Kevin Huerter, only 8 points. Clint Capella, just 6 points. Lou Williams and Danilo Gallinari, respectively, finished with 17 and 19 points. But this was just a night where the Hawks, really, they could have won this game. Like, let's be honest here. If they didn't come out looking horrendous in that first quarter, they were down, Logan, by 14 at the end of the first quarter. They were down at one point 30-10 in the first quarter of Game 5. So they just didn't bring that intensity level to start. In this game, they cut it to 6 in the second half. It was 65-59 at one point. But at the end of the day, the Bucks just have a much better supporting cast. So, Logan, I'll hand it over to you. What have you seen in these last few games of the Eastern Conference Finals that have really caught your eye? You know, each team without their franchise player. We're still unsure of what's going to happen tonight for Game 6 back in Atlanta. Is Giannis going to play? Is Trae going to play? We're not sure what is going on. But from what you've seen thus far, Logan, what have been your biggest takeaways these last couple of games in the Eastern Conference Finals?
Well, there's been a few. First off, the Hawks and the Bucks are both very capable without their franchise player. I think they both have the ability to get it done. Because, I mean, even considering the fact that they were without Trae Young for, what was it, Game 4 and 5.
Game 4.
Yeah.
Game
4 and 5, yeah. But Game 4 is the one I'm referring to. The one where, even though Giannis didn't play the entire second half pretty much, they were still in the game. They were leading at the end of the first quarter. Their lead even expanded in the second. And they were in the whole game. I think it was a complete mental factor of the fact that they were like, all right, well, we're the underdogs now. It's time to get it done.
Right.
Now is when you got to show up.
Right. And
they did. Lou Williams showed up. Bogdanovich showed up. Capella had a big game. Kevin Huerter shot pretty well. But, even then, you look at the numbers. John Collins also. They're probably their second best player.
He's been amazing.
Played awful. He had 4 points.
Yeah, but throughout the playoffs he's been great for Atlanta. That was just a bad performance.
And even in this one, he played awful, and they still won by a lot.
Yeah.
So it's to me that's just a complete. You're a dog mentality. You get out there, you get it done.
Yeah.
So and then Game 5 is vice versa. I mean, absolutely beautiful, masterful performance by Brook Lopez, 14 of 18, and I never thought I'd ever be saying that in my entire life.
Right.
33. What a job. And Drew Holiday has been a much better facilitator than I expected him to be coming into Milwaukee. I mean, I expected him to come out and, be a great defensive factor, maybe put in some points here and there, but I never expected him to be the kind of facilitator that he's been throughout these playoffs for this Bucks offense. I think he's been crucial for them offensively and being able to move the ball without Giannis. As for expectations the rest of the series, I think the Hawks force Game 7.
Okay.
I think Trae Young will come back in Game 7. I think Giannis, if he's good to go, if he's cleared, I think he'll play.
Yeah.
Game 7.
Right.
I don't see him not. He's not Kyrie. But I think, it's going to be a battle, for sure. I don't see how the Hawks, after you saw their mental capacity and their ability to knock down shots when it matters, shown in Game 4, I don't see them not forcing a 7th game in this series.
Okay. Even if Trae Young doesn't play in Game 6, you still think the Hawks can force a Game 7, Logan?
I do, and I definitely think that, like I said before, I think both of these stars are going to play if they're not basically broken. Like if they can walk, I think they'll play. I'm one of those guys for sure that Game 7, you're paid millions and millions of dollars a year. I understand trying to preserve and prolong your career, but at the same time, you get the chance to go. You're cleared to play. You got to get out there. You got to play the game.
Yeah.
You got to take the chance and you got to play.
Yeah, and who knows if these teams will ever be back in this position again. You just never know, especially for the Atlanta Hawks. And, will they keep this core, and can they ever get back here? They certainly have the time and the potential to do so, but again, you never know what can happen. I want to ask you about this too, Logan, because I was watching on Fox Sports the show Undisputed with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, and they were talking about this in regards to the Milwaukee Bucks. Skip Bayless was talking about, this Milwaukee Bucks, are they a better team without Giannis Antetokounmpo? No. I mean, it's been one game, let's be honest. I would never say that they're a better team without Giannis. But they look like a more free-flowing team. And this was kind of what Skip Bayless was talking about as well. Brook Lopez was doing his job as a center. Brook Lopez is actually the starting center for the Milwaukee Bucks, but he never plays like it. He's almost like a shooting guard, the way he stands out behind the three-point line all the time. But now, since Giannis was out, Brook Lopez focused being more in the paint, and he's a huge guy. Like, he's almost 300 pounds. I think he's about 7'1", if I'm not mistaken. This guy is strong and can do basically anything he wants in the paint. And when we look at how this Bucks team played without Giannis, because when Giannis plays, it's always he has to get a running start to get to the basket. He doesn't shoot the ball very well at all. He rarely ever attempts a perimeter shot. So it's not as free-flowing because you have to get Giannis ingratiated within the offensive sets and everything like that. So your thoughts on this, Logan? Do the Hawks look like a better team without Giannis? Because I personally don't think they do, but they certainly look more like a free-flowing team. The offense looks a lot more organized to me without Giannis. Now, I think they do need Giannis, obviously, to, if not win this series, then certainly win the championship. But do your thoughts on that perspective from Skip Bayless?
Yeah, I think they look kind of more free-flowing. You can compare them to the Browns. Minus Odell Beckham Jr., we saw them forcing it to him, and it forced Baker into a lot of interceptions throughout.
Right.
A lot of bad deep ball attempts, and I think it's comparable to that situation out there. I think with Giannis in the game, they feel obligated to force him the ball and get him inside and get his shots up, but that's not always the best scenario.
Right.
I think that we'll definitely be able to exploit the different parts of the defensive weaknesses of the Atlanta Hawks without Giannis in there, because there's not really a way to stop a team that has more than 2 or 3 scorers on the team.
Right.
And with Brook Lopez playing at that level, I already said that I don't think the Hawks are not going to force a Game 7. But at the same time, I don't see, if Brook Lopez plays like that, Game 6 tonight, I don't see the Bucks losing.
And when we talk about Game 6, Logan, do you believe that, so you obviously have the Hawks winning, and then let's go to Game 7. Do you think in Game 7 that the Hawks can pull it out on the road, or do you think the Bucks will hold serve at home court?
I think it's very possible that the Bucks will pull it out on the road the Hawks will, because we're talking about a team that has the ability to light it up from anywhere. This is a team that can absolutely shoot the lights off of any building, and the Bucks with a crippled Giannis, even if Giannis isn't 100%, this Bucks team is already at a disadvantage, because I think Trae Young is in better shape than Giannis is. So
for sure.
I think you've got a better chance of the Hawks coming out with their top tier franchise player 100% versus the Bucks.
Yeah, this is going to be definitely an interesting game tonight from Atlanta, Game 6. Can the Bucks close it out tonight, or will the Hawks force a Game 7? Game 6 today at 8:30 p.m., and if the Hawks win tonight in Atlanta, we'll be back in Milwaukee for Game 7 at the Pfizer Forum. That'll be Monday, July 5th. Tip-off would be at 8:30 p.m. as well. And Logan, this is I can't wait to see these hopefully next couple of games in the Eastern Conference Finals. This series will determine who plays Phoenix in the NBA Finals. But we're not done with basketball news quite yet, Logan. We're going to talk about the WNBA here for a little bit. We'll look at the nightly leaders in terms of the WNBA, the season leaders as well. Tina Charles still leads the league in points per game at about 25 points per game. Jonquel Jones of Connecticut right there in second place, averaging about 22 points per game. Jonquel Jones, although she is second in points per game, still leads the league in rebounds per game at about 10. Brianna Stewart in third place with around 9 rebounds per game. Courtney Vandersloot of Chicago, Logan, averaging about 9 assists per game. That's tops in the WNBA thus far in the season. And then Chelsea Gray of Las Vegas, averaging about 6 assists to go for second place. Sue Bird also averaging about 6 assists this season to get that third place spot for assists in the WNBA. We look at the standings too, Logan. Connecticut Sun, they've been looking strong these last 2 games. They've won their last 4. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. The 12-5 record overall. The Chicago Sky, 8-2 in their last 10 games. The addition of Candace Parker really has been a tremendous boost for them. They're 10-9 on the season thus far. We look at the Western Conference. The Las Vegas Aces and Seattle Storm are tied in terms of records for that first place spot. Right now, Las Vegas is on top. They have a 13-4 record. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They've won 3 in a row as well. Seattle Storm with an identical record of 13-4. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games and have won their most recent game. The Minnesota Lynx are in third place in the conference, Logan. 8 wins and 7 losses. They've won their last 3 games and are 7-3 in their last 10 games. So, Logan, I'm going to ask you about the WNBA here a little bit. Who's your take right now? Let's start with the Eastern Conference. The team that you're most impressed with this week, and the team that you're most disappointed with. Because in terms of disappointment, I mean, the Indiana Fever can't be more disappointing than that. You're 1-16 in the season so far, 0-10 in their last 10 games. They're 0-8 on the road. They're only 1-8 at home. They've lost their last 12 games, so that's certainly obviously very disappointing. But when you look at the Eastern Conference and the WNBA, which team are you most impressed with, and who have you been disappointed with thus far?
Well, impressed Chicago Sky. I mean, they were really struggling at the beginning of the season without Candace Parker, but since she came back, they have absolutely dominated. Yes. I mean, they have been fantastic. They have put themselves promptly in second place in the Eastern Conference. They're only 3 games behind Connecticut, and I think that they might have a chance at reclaiming that because they are one of those teams that can just get hot, especially with the veteran, Candace Parker. She's been really, really good since she came back, obviously, off that injury. I think there's a really good chance that Chicago continues their hot streak and continues to win games.
When you look at who's been disappointing to you in the Eastern Conference, Logan, you can talk about, the Mystics. They haven't been up to par. The Atlanta Dream, they're only 2-8 in their last 10 games. The New York Liberty are 8-9. They're only 3-7 in their last 10 games and are 8-9. I was talking about the Indiana Fever. They have the worst record in the WNBA at 1-16. They've lost their last 12. So when you look at the Eastern Conference, Logan, who's been the most disappointing for you this week?
Well, this week it's got to be Atlanta, and even New York Liberty. You could make the argument for. New York. It was one of those teams that a couple weeks ago we were looking at. Middle of the pack. They've got a good chance to maybe take a couple steps up, but they're 3-7 in the last 10.
Yeah.
Now they're third place behind Chicago, who's rolling right now at 8-2. Sabrina Ionescu, has been inconsistent. I think that's one of the biggest reasons along with Ionescu. They've just all been not playing the way that they should be to be able to run with the teams like Chicago, who just got hot, like I mentioned earlier. with the Connecticuts of the Eastern Conference and the teams like that. But like I said, they're still in third place. They still have a good chance to take a step up. They're only a game behind Chicago.
Yeah.
So they just need to hit the reset button and figure it back out.
And let's look at the Western Conference, Logan, because the top two teams are the Las Vegas Aces and the Seattle Storm. Both of them with the best records. They're tied for the best record in the WNBA at 13-4. When you look at the Las Vegas Aces and the Seattle Storm, yes, they have Sue Bird, who is getting older, but they also have a young talent in Breanna Stewart, who has just been an absolutely sensational this season. But the Aces are right there, and they're an up-and-coming team. So if you were to have to bet money on who would win a playoff series between those two teams today, who would you take? Would you take the experience of the Seattle Storm or the firepower of the Las Vegas Aces?
I think you go either way, but personally, I'm going to have to take the Seattle Storm.
Yeah.
And the only reason that I take that is the one player that you mentioned, and that is Breanna Stewart. I mean, she is just next level. She's fantastic. She's the WNBA's version of LeBron James.
Right.
She's unbelievably good. And don't get me wrong, Asia Wilson is doing great things over in Las Vegas, but the youth of the team, it kind of worries me a little bit come playoff time. It's a very young team. They've got a lot of young stars that have really got a chance to be great. But the problem, Jackie Young being one of them at that guard position, she's had a really good year. But the problem is, it's just the veteran and the experience of Seattle come playoff time is going to, I think, work better in their favor than the youth of Las Vegas. I think it's going to overpower them, and I think Asia Wilson isn't going to have enough in the postseason to completely carry her team over Breanna Stewart, Jewel Lloyd, and Sue Bird.
Yeah, nonetheless, though, if the Seattle Storm and the Las Vegas Aces meet in a playoff series, that is certainly going to be must-see TV. The upcoming games in the WNBA for you, today we have 3 games. Mystics going up against the Liberty today. That game has tipped off already, 1 p.m. Sun going up against the Fever as well this afternoon, and then the Lynx will be taking on the Mercury today at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow, for your 4th of July, there are 2 WNBA games for you. The Dream taking on the Aces, and then the Seattle Storm going up against the LA Sparks. Monday, 1 game for you with the Dallas Wings taking on Sabrina Ionescu and the New York Liberty. And that concludes WNBA and basketball news for us this week, Logan. But we can't forget about the Cleveland Indians. And when we talk about the Indians, Logan, they're 3-7 in their last 10 games. So, they've struggled these last few games. Right now they're 42-37 on the season thus far. That lead, or the number of games behind they are to catch up with the White Sox, the Chicago White Sox, for that AL Central pennant in first place ranking is starting to get larger and larger. They're now 6 games behind Chicago for that first place seed. And when we look at the last few games for the Indians, they lost to the Twins 8-2 this past Sunday. Then they come home and destroy the Tigers 13-5, a big win for the Indians. And I'll be honest with you, Logan, I am very disappointed with how this 3-game home series turned out with Detroit, because the Indians, there were 3 games, and the Indians lost 2 of them. They had that win on Monday against the Tigers 13-5, but then they lost the remaining 2 games, 9-4 at home, and then 7-1 at home. So, and then they're playing the Houston Astros, who are one of the best teams in the MLB this year, and they're just getting hammered. They lost this past Thursday 7-2, and then 6-3 yesterday. So they have really struggled these last few games, Logan. What's going on with the Indians in your mind? Are they just playing better teams? Because you can't say that about Detroit, because let's be honest, Detroit's not that good. I know they're 36-46. Yeah, they're 6-4 in their last 10 games. They're improving, but they're not on that level of the Indians, in my eyes anyway. So, and then, the Houston Astros, yes, they made the World Series a few years ago. They are a powerhouse baseball team, but they got destroyed 7-2, and then they lost 6-3 again yesterday. So are the Indians just playing better teams than them, or is it just a lack of focus or something that's going on internally with the group?
So when it comes to the Detroit series, so I'm going to personally start at the Detroit series because the Minnesota series, we only got to see like the bitter end of that one.
Right.
So I'm going to start the Detroit series. Obviously, they came out strong. 13-5 win is a big win against Detroit at home.
Yeah.
But the problem is, later in the series, obviously you mentioned Detroit is an awful team. Detroit is not good. This is not a team that should be battling with the Indians. Jonathan Scoop is very, very good. He's got a chance to be talented and continue to be really good.
These should have been all 3 wins for the Indians. I'm going to be honest with you.
I think the problem is the lack of bullpen. If you look at both of the games, there were late runs scored. The Indians have no late bullpen. They have no relievers, no closers. That is the issue. Their starters, I mentioned at the beginning of the season, they've picked it up.
Yeah.
Bieber's been, obviously, that is Shane Bieber. Brian Shaw pitched a couple nights in the second game against Detroit. He didn't pitch all that great. He pitched okay, though.
Right.
Only pitched 10 innings, got 2 of them. But the problem is they just don't have consistent guys to come in and fill.
Yeah.
They gave up 15 hits in the second game of the series.
Right.
So for the Detroit series, I think it's a lack of a bullpen completely.
Yeah.
And then against the Astros, the Astros are one of the best teams in baseball. I hate to say it, but it's the best offense in baseball if you ask me. I think that there's really no way to stop them unless you just out-hit them, which is unlikely.
Yeah.
So unless you're having Shane Bieber pitch all 4 games of the series, the odds of them winning more than 2 are winning more than 1, honestly, are quite low, unfortunately, for the Indians. So when it comes to the Astros, it's just a great team. It is just a loaded Astros team that it's unlikely to lose. But the Detroit series, I think it's just lack of a bullpen.
What specifically, you just talked about the lack of the bullpen in that Detroit series, but from individualistic perspective, is there a specific player on the Indians that needs to step up their game, especially in these next couple of games against the Astros, and then you're playing the Rays and the Royals? So are there any specific players that need to stand out for you and give the Indians some juice?
Yeah, a couple of being some starters, maybe even Logan Allen didn't have a great week either. He's one of the pitchers starters. I'll give you one of each. Emmanuel Clase hasn't really pitched a whole lot this season at all, really.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprises me. But another guy, Nick Whitgren. He's played okay. Again, it's just one of those guys who needs to be able to come out and consistently play better. He's only in his sixth year of major leagues, and I think he's got to continue to earn his job because right now none of these relievers are doing it. Brian Shaw, like I mentioned, had a good day on the second game of the series, but it's just a matter of coming out and getting the job done when it matters most, following some of the great pitch performances that we've seen from Savale, Bieber, and Plesac, for that matter, who have all had really good games at times this season that have just been ruined by late runs scored as a result of Wood, Shaw, Clase, all of these relievers and closers who just can't get it done.
And finally, for the Indians, Logan, their upcoming schedule, they have 2 more games against the Astros at home at Progressive Field, today at 7:15 p.m., and then tomorrow for your July 4th celebration, you can turn on the Indians at 1:10 p.m. tomorrow for their final game at home against the Astros. The Indians will then have 3 games on the road in Tampa Bay against the Rays, and the Rays have been playing some great baseball, Logan. Granted, they are only 4-6 in their last 10 games, but they have a solid record of 47-35, and they're 23-16 at home. So the Indians are going to have their hands full for those next 3 games. Then they come home for 4 games against the Royals. Now, if you asked me at the beginning of the season, Logan, can this Royals team make some noise in the AL Central? I would have told you, yeah, sure. I think they have some bright spots and some talents. But right now, they're 34-47. They're only 1-9 in their last 10 games. So when I look at this Indians-Royals series at home for 4 games, I have the same expectations that I went to for this Detroit series at home. 4 games against the Royals at home. I expect all 4 wins for the Indians because the Royals, they're just not on that level as they've proven this season. So when you look at these games, these 3 road games in Tampa Bay and then these next 4 home games at Progressive Field against the Royals, what do you want to see from the Indians as they look to try and close that gap between them and the Chicago White Sox?
Well, at least in the series against the Royals, I somewhat agree with you. I'm going to go with 3. I want to say at least 3 games. The only problem that I have going against Kansas City is they've got a lot of streaky hitters. Guys that go on little runs and can have a couple of big games. I mean, Hanser Alberto is one of them. Whit Merrifield is a huge talent at second base. And even, former Red Sox Andrew Benintendi is another guy that has a really good on-base percentage, and he gets it done, especially, on the road. He's got great batting average on the road. But I'd love to see at least 3 games taken against Kansas City. The end of this Houston series is unpredictable. We've already talked about how great of a Houston team it is. And then Tampa Bay, I mean, what else more is there to say? It's a fantastic Tampa Bay team that's kind of underperformed this past season.
Only
really struggled last night against Toronto, losing 11-1. But I still think it's a series that they should probably take at least one game out of.
Yeah. And, Tampa Bay is susceptible to, making mistakes. They are only 4-6 in their last 10 games, so maybe the Indians can take advantage and maybe get a win in one of these games against the Astros, take some momentum to Tampa Bay, and then come back fresh, ready to go against the Royals. We'll see what happens. But, Logan, that concludes our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. I know we were talking a little bit and you're actually on vacation, so I really appreciate you taking the time during your vacation to join me for another podcast. I hope you have a terrific 4th of July weekend, Logan, and I'll see you for our next episode very soon.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure, Logan. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me for another episode. There's more where that came from, so don't worry about it. And all of my work in previous episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show are all on NordoniaHills.news. That's right. If you're on NordoniaHills.news, just go to the Contributors tab, and my name is one of the first few down. It's Darius Sethna, spelled Dariussethna. So make sure you click on my name, and then all of my work will be found there on the Nordonia Hill, on my page on NordoniaHills.news. All the media work is there for you to listen to and to read. That's right, I have posted some articles on NordoniaHills.news. If you keep scrolling down a little bit, I have some articles that I wrote during my school year, during my senior year of high school, so make sure you check those out. Obviously, previous episodes for the Cleveland Sports Show, and I also did play-by-play broadcasting for the Nordonia High School varsity boys basketball team, so make sure you watch those games and take a listen to my broadcast. We definitely had some terrific games that we covered at the high school for the basketball team. They had a great roster and some very thrilling games here. You're not going to want to miss out on that. I'm also on Twitter. That's right. If you are on Twitter, guess what? You have access to all my work on there as well. Just go to Twitter and in the search bar, type in my handle, my Twitter handle, which is @Nordonia Sports, or you can type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, Darius Sethna. From there, all of my podcasts, all the links to the articles, everything on NordoniaHills.news is posted there on Twitter as well. So if you're on Twitter, well, guess what? You've got the Cleveland Sports Show and all of my other work right there, ready, waiting for you. And also, we have the Cleveland Sports Show on the NordoniaHills.news YouTube page. That's right. So if you ever find yourself on YouTube, then you can go to the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page, and all my episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show will be on there as well for you to listen to. And I'm also very proud to announce that the Cleveland Sports Show has been on Spotify for a while now, so you're going to want to check that out as well. If you're on Spotify, then guess what? You've got the Cleveland Sports Show with you. You can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you anywhere on the go on Spotify. Just type in my name in the Spotify search bar, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and all of my work will be there on Spotify for you to listen to. Well, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, very special thanks to Logan Purcell and all of his terrific work on the podcast. Really appreciate all of his analysis once again. And we'll see you soon for another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Probably in a couple of weeks. I will be on vacation these next couple of weeks. So in about 2 weeks or so, we'll be back with our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. And man, we will have a lot to talk about then. So can't wait to see you for another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show in a few weeks. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful 4th of July holiday and take care. Thanks, everyone.